Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and at this point you probably know what this video might be about. We're talking about Legos. Now initially I was a little bit apprehensive, I didn't really know what to think about, but the more I looked into the story, the more I was blown away at how a story about Lego blocks have led to a possible story about government corruption, police corruption, and in some ways, possible police brutality. It's crazy shit to see. So how did this story basically start? We have to go all the way kind of at the beginning, but I'll warm you into it, ladies and gentlemen. You all know what a Lego probably is. You probably played with them as kids. They're little blocks that you connect together. And in some cases, you know, if you were growing up like me, your parents probably bought you like a set. Maybe you got like a bucket. Maybe you got Mega Blocks. But in some cases, some of these actual Lego sets can be pretty fucking expensive. For instance, you want this Shrek Donkey Puss in Boots? That can be $180 Canadian. The Endurance, for instance, could be $350 Canadian. This story involves a family that has an estimated value of $150,000 to $200,000 worth of actual Lego. So to give you an idea, the Mansell family in this case was a family that had invested a chunk of money, $30,000, and over the course of 15 years, the value of the Lego sets that they purchased went up from $30,000 to above north of $150,000. So they had about 700 plus sets, over 1,000 minifigurines, and all of this was basically sent to a store called Bricks and Minifigs to be sold under consignment. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, how are these so valuable? To give you an idea, the Lego economy, much like the retro gaming economy, which I kind of used to collect, not anymore because, to be honest with you, the things have gotten so expensive. It's like Pokemon cards, like any collectible. Once some douchebag jumps into it, things just blow out of proportions, and the average interested normie falls out of favor. But for instance, one such actual set, the Lego Star Wars Cloud City, you might think isn't really that big of a deal. Well, according to the brick economy, the people that look into the economics of Legos, it is currently valued at around 21,440 Canadian dolans. So you can see that over time, much like appreciative assets, they grow up over time. I guess I've learned that certain Lego sets are basically appreciating assets. It's like CSGO skins, right? It's like any speculative asset that just keeps going up. At some point, it's like you're actually purchasing an investment. However, this is not investment advice. So to give you an idea, these individuals sold they basically consigned their collection over to a store called Bricks and Minifigs, who would basically handle the entire selling of the actual material, and they would take a little, they would take like a little percentage off the top for their efforts in selling this collection. It's kind of how a lot of these people will sell their stuff, right? Instead of going through the hassle themselves, they're going to go to one of the largest stores in this game, which is Bricks and Minifigs, get their collection, and then they'll basically handle the process of selling it. So even according to this, like the Salem Business Journal, their collection was built as a long-term investment to one day supplement the funding for the next generation's college education. So noble goal. And it turns out that if it wasn't for all this hoopla, these people would actually have a pretty chunk of change that could have gone towards, letting their, future generation get educated. So according to this situation with the Salem Business Journal, Mansell, who owned the consigned collection, Benjamin and Crystal Law Gorman, the former franchise owners whose store was seized by corporate, by the way. So the big corporation comes in, Aaron McNeff, CEO of BAM Franchising, the parent company behind Bricks and Minifigs. They basically reviewed the signed consignment agreement, a formal termination letter sent by Mansell, an email correspondence documenting the consignment arrangement, photographic evidence, every single thing imaginable. And to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I even have some of these actual documents to show you. So the consignment agreement, for instance, right over here, they say that Mansell owns a large collection of retired Star Wars Lego sets, basically new, unopened, used, blah, 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 cataloged, again, in Schedule 1, which we'll see as well, too. Bricks will pay to Mansell a portion of the sales proceeds, which will be calculated. 65% of the proceeds from the gross sale of the Star Wars Legos as well are going towards him. And of course, as you can see right over here, what's important is 4, which is the consigned merchandise shall remain the property of Mansell until sold. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the store never had the the ownership of these Lego sets. Neither did corporate. Ultimately, it was Mansell. It was him and his dad that owned this stuff. It was their shit. Like playing any video game with dialogue choices and options, it seems like the corporate office picks the worst possible decisions all the way through. Now, obviously, for a family that's this stressed out, they were dealing with corporate, they were dealing with a, government that wasn't necessarily fighting on their behalf. So what did they do? They decided to go to a YouTuber, and that YouTuber was Reckless Ben. Now, Reckless Ben is an individual that has been involved now in the story, pretty much in the trenches of it. This is a man that is now involved in a legal case, and this is also a man that has had law enforcement agencies kick down his door and raid him like it was SWAT 4. It's an insane fucking story, and it's one of the reasons why I'm really talking, because the more you look at this, the more it blows. So to give you an idea, just the understanding of how this went, the Mansell family owned this collection. The Consignment, which was delivered in a 65-35 split to the Kaiser store, the store that holds it but does not own the stuff. This franchise is then killed, the store is seized in November 14th of 2024. BAM then takes it, offsets alleged $200,000 franchise debt with this, and then of course the inventory buys it a month later, the Baker Bricks, which is again the new operators, and the outcome over here is this stuff is still not returned. Something that I did look in my research was apparently this UCC1 forum, which had it been done by the consignor at the time, would have actually made it so that this would have been a lot smoother of a process for the Mansells to get their sets back. But apparently I've seen that there's discussion legally that it may seem the big corporation can use the lack of this financing statement to possibly, affirm or at least say the seizing of the sets may have been fallen into their sort of purview, may have been okay by them. But also I've heard lawyers that say that, again, the Mansells can walk out of it. The only reason I include this is because it seems like a lot of things were missed, and ultimately the family is harmed in this process because of just this whole situation being as messy as it is. There's a lot of contributing factors, and there's a lot of plays that are being made at the moment. Now, to give you guys a quick understanding of Reckless Ben, he is quite, in fact, a reckless individual. He's fucked with Scientology. He has a different way of investigating these kind of stories, right? He is more of a showman. Well, he's also a very good investigator. I don't want to, denigrate the man, but he's also a very good showman in this situation. And there was a couple things that Ben had done to basically antagonize, I would say, Bricks and Minifigs, anything to raise the awareness, right? And awareness he did raise. So for instance, he would run allegedly these rival businesses, and there was even a company called We Steal From Old People. Apparently there were lottery raffles, and there were staff that was tricked into signing concessionary statements. There was a Lego cult, for crying out loud. It was a whole bunch of shit, okay? And the idea of it was apparently corporate would end up probably suing him so that allegations of theft could be aired in front of a judge. Now, Ben would not leave it until, of course, he had helped this family get their money back, which ultimately, at the end of the day, was a very noble and important goal. Again, this is the story of a small community, a small group of people against a corporate entity, right? And the corporate entity, mind you, is actually in the fucking wrong for this story. The family should get their Lego collection back, which is actually worth a sizable portion of money. I don't care who the fuck you are, hundreds of thousands of dollars is no joke. At the end of the day, given the actual evidence that we've seen, given the actual documents that we've seen showing how favorable the consignment was to the family, and again, all the tabulation, it should be easy for this organization to just give this back. It really just seems like this big corporation is stealing from a fucking small family over here. So anyways, it gets even deeper, ladies and gentlemen. So Reckless Ben decides that as he's doing this investigation, at the same time, law enforcement agencies in the surrounding area are going to get involved and basically, in some ways, target him, right? They're going to go after him, they're going to follow him in every step of the way, and they're going to look into every aspect of what he's doing. They're going to tell him that he's breaking the law. And if you watch these videos, Ben actually will explain how he's not breaking the law, right? Here's one clip where, again, Ben is placing this, sign down where it says, "I stole a dying man's life savings," which, it sounds very harsh, But obviously, given everything that I've seen, I have no other way to not see this, right? So to give you an idea, this is kind of what Ben has to deal with regarding the law enforcement in Utah. So listen to this.
Freedom of speech, I am breaking no laws by doing this. So when Josh walks outside to take down this sign, I have a process server to serve him his court papers. But almost immediately, my sign got blocked.
Oh no, he's blocking our sign.
What are you guys doing here?
So we are in a court case with them and we have to serve them legal papers.
So I explained to the cops the entire situation.
I'm not going on his property.
Right, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
The police realized that we're not breaking any laws, and they've been called here for a false reason, so they decided to leave.
Awesome, thank you.
I mean, you would think that law enforcement, if the fact that the family still owns legally, from what I understand, those Lego sets, it shouldn't even be a civil situation. This should be a situation that is now criminal in this case. They should be assisting the man and his father with their collection and returning it to the rightful owners. I mean, it seems so fucking simple, but everything surrounding the story is taking the worst possible runs. So throughout the situation, Ben ends up actually getting raided by law enforcement agents. So you can see, like, outside the Airbnb that he's staying at, you can see cops are lined up. They got the rifles out and everything. They are fucking doing and executing a fucking search warrant. They're raiding the house, Rainbow Six Siege style. These guys have been handcuffed. And why were they handcuffed? Well, I even decided to pull out the warrant actual affidavit, the affidavit for the search warrant. And over here, I shit you not, there is literally the crappiest response they could have actually provided. So inside over here, they say that the facts to establish the grounds of a search warrant, again, go down over here, the officers contact the homeowner of the Airbnb to inquire about video footage in the house, right? Like cameras around and shit. The homeowner was cooperative, provided video footage that displayed Benjamin walking into the basement apartment at exactly, 4 o'clock on this day. The homeowner also disclosed that he could hear multiple individuals inside the residence speaking about possible stolen Lego toys that they had taken. Now again, I'm going to be completely real with you. Reading that, it seems like the most flimsiest fucking excuse for a warrant, but that's apparently all they needed to raid this guy. And again, I would say harass him. And you could argue that Reckless Ben was also, I guess, in some ways kind of being harassing himself too, like by setting up signs, starting up these fake businesses, basically being the guy that he is. But the reality of it is that ultimately the story started out not from a YouTuber picking a fight with a corporate entity. It's that a YouTuber was fighting for a family, a small family, against corporate entities that really just kind of fucking seems to have taken Lego sets, an actual really high value investment from this family. They took this family's money and they're not giving it back. I just don't know what to say. So you can actually see that at this point, again, when I told you the worst possible decisions that anybody could do, the CEO, BAM Franchising, actually sues Benjamin Schneider, who is Reckless Ben's company, and again, Brian Mansell, and of course, Victor Nguyen. So again, instead of rightfully returning the actual Lego sets to the family, they decided, okay, we're just gonna fucking sue them now, right? And again, you have to understand, right? Like, you can probably be in like a million email threads with these kind of assholes, and they will just run rings around you, but the moment you actually try to fight back, they will use the legal system to effectively crush you. So they say that Brian demands return of allegedly consigned Lego product without evidence. So within 24 to 48 hours following Crystal's termination. So the argument that I believe BAM is making is that they weren't the ones that signed this agreement. It was actually an agreement signed by the previous party. So it's really just between them and the Mansell family. But if you guys took possession and it's under your domain, you should return it back, okay? It's just that fucking simple. So they keep arguing about it within 24 to 48 hours, right? Brandon answered, explained Crystal and Salem, LLC, had abandoned the store and were no longer involved. Brian claimed he had a consignment arrangement of some sort with Crystal and stated that she had not paid him monies that were due from the sale. Josh and Brandon were skeptical, and Brandon explained the need for evidence of any ownership claim he may have. Brian shows up later that day and began yelling at personnel and holding up purported consignment paperwork, demanding the immediate return or payment of $80,000. So obviously, look, I can understand why he shows up yelling and he's angry, right? I would understand why somebody's belligerent when $80,000 is there. $80,000 is not a small chunk of change, okay? That's a lot of fucking money. That's life-changing money for people, right? How many of you guys, or how much better would your life be if you had $80,000 right now and you could just pay off whatever debt you have, you could afford some? How much would it change your life? I guess that's a question anybody can ask, right? So Josh interceded and asked to review it and briefly did, and so pointed out that neither Bam nor Josh and Brandon were party to the arrangement, as he claimed he had a purported inventory list. Josh and Brandon invited him to review the limited number of Lego sets on display, which were in Bam's corporate-owned store at the time. When Brian could not identify any Lego set, he accused Josh of lying and was told to leave. Brian's purported list, which he later provided Josh and Brandon in or after May 2025, was problematic in that it was not complete and did not have value data for every listed item. So again, they're asking you to be, I guess, more thorough than, fuck, whatever you would even give to the Internal Revenue Service at this point. Brandon briefly investigated whether any consignment product might exist in boxes in the back or elsewhere in the store, as confirmed by 2 personnel. Brian returned later that evening with the police and accused Josh and Brandon of theft, which they denied. Josh and Brandon informed the police that Bam had recently repossessed the store and they were unaware of any of these agreements. And they did not knowingly possess any of his alleged property. So again, after an internal audit, they said that after many months later in the fall of 2025, they had found out that, again, when they had looked into the incomplete and, inaccurate, like, POS accounting system, Josh and Brandon's informal audit and recent discovery show that Star Wars products similar to the same sets allegedly consigned by Brian were virtually all sold prior to December 2024 by Crystal or Salem LLC, suggesting very few of the alleged product existed thereafter, as Crystal has sold virtually all of it. To the effect she effectuated such sales, it appears she may not have compensated Brian for such or provided him with any accounting, giving rise to their private legal dispute. Again, the pointing towards this Crystal individual and Brian is sort of the out that they want, right? Like, again, they took ownership, they basically took the store, but they don't want to take the baggage, I guess, that comes with it, right? Which doesn't necessarily make any sense to me. I'd want somebody to explain this better. Again, I'm having a hard time understanding the out that Bam is trying to paint over here, other than just being, well, shitty. So again, at this point in the lawsuit, they start talking about, YouTube videos by Reckless Ben, where they mention that the title, "I Tracked Down the Thief Who Stole $200,000 of Lego," was, again, false and defamatory. And of course, they bring up all of this stuff over here. They bring up even things like, "We have to do something illegal over here," where again, they're pointing out that the actual activities done by Ben, and they're pointing it out so that they can use these activities that Ben had done to undermine their case against them and basically find their out against, again, making this family whole. So what is kind of important about this too is people wonder, where are these Lego sets? And again, according to Bam, they don't seem to have anything meaningful over here. However, even in this legal complaint over here, you can see that in late 2025, and based on co-defendants' ongoing harassment, Brandon and Josh further investigated the Baker Salem store inventory. And though they still could not reliably identify any product that appeared to belong to Brian, they located a few, about 20 sets, in a back office lockable cupboard, on which they noticed stickers not previously recognized. As a precaution only, but still without knowledge that Brian in fact had any right thereto, they directed that such not be sold from Baker Salem's inventory and remain locked up pending completion of the ongoing investigation. So, could those sets be a part of the Mansell family's collection, or could they not? I really have no fucking clue. And honestly, until this investigation is done and dusted, nobody's really going to know the answer to that. So Bricks and Minifigs actually did make a response to this entire situation, right? And this is kind of their side of the story, right? Obviously, they say the typical PR stuff like seeing a father and his family at the center of a dispute, yada, 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 is heartbreaking. While our initial responses focused on legal defenses And because we as an entire brand are now forced to process a massive wave of online chaos, we feel the online community deserves a clear response. Okay, so let's see what they said. The public narrative surrounding Bricks and Minifigs, yada yada yada, knowingly stole a $100,000 to $200,000 collection is not true. The actual origin lies in an unauthorized local consignment arrangement between an independent former franchisee of the Salem store and the Mansell family. When BAM Corporate repossessed the store due to the former owner's financial defaults and other breaches, BAM was unaware of any unauthorized and undisclosed consignment arrangement and was not a party to such. To interject, I have a bit of an issue with this statement alone because, again, according to Reckless Ben's reporting, when he was talking with the former franchise owner of this location, it turns out that there was actually security footage that night, apparently, of the former franchise owner bringing up this consignment deal, and of course, what seemed to be corporate saying that all of this acquisition of her establishment by corporate would actually come with them taking over these consignment operations too. So just listen to this really quickly.
All the footage and evidence is there in the security cam footage. It's him at the store kicking her out. In that footage they sent us is Crystal asking him, how am I supposed to pay this guy? These are sets he has not been paid for.
These are ones that he has not been paid his percentage yet. And if I don't have the tickets, I won't know how much I need to pay him.
That's a business thing and not necessarily yours. He's taking on the business, he takes on all that consignment.
His own corporation is sitting there on video saying they're going to take it.
Again, you listen to just that clip, and this is where these tidbits don't make sense for corporate. In fact, the collection was not even located in the store based on our investigation. Again, that's also, you have to understand that there's even those unmarked boxes, which also raise questions. But anyways, however, we're hopeful the individuals involved in the private dispute can resolve such amongst themselves, which we support. Our goal is to ensure this grandfather and his family are not left out. After taking over the store, we discovered a small number of sets, so valued at $2 to $5 grand, that could possibly be related. So they mention it over here. We offered to return these to the Mansell family, though BAM had no legal obligation to do so, but it was refused. However, BAM's past offers in resolving this third-party dispute still stand today. So we refuse to let private legal battle obscure our core values. So it is true where they say like corporate took on the consignment liability, they say that because it was done privately, they're not responsible for it. But it's insane that we can listen to that clip just earlier and just now all of a sudden this company was like, no, just because they said it verbally doesn't make it binding by any imagination. I'm sure legally it probably doesn't, but it's so unethical to have made that statement coming from a corporate employee and then now you're going to renege on it? Like, fuck you. Now again, honestly, at the end of the day, legally speaking, I don't know anything about how these consignment operations would work. This is not my, realm, but everything that I've kind of seen over here is ethically, I think one of the best, I guess the best way to kind of handle it is probably look at, I'm assuming these stores have like some level of insurance. Maybe look into your insurance and consider, paying out the family through insurance and then taking the battle between you and the person you took the franchise from. It really seems like this Crystal individual and BAM have sort of a fight between themselves that has more validity than involving this family. At the end of the day, the family is the one that's losing the most. They're not a big business. They're not even like a franchisee of a business. This is somebody that had their life savings put into something, and ultimately, at the end of the day, right, like they're the ones that aren't able to see their money until I guess all of this stuff is resolved. And now that you've got legal breathing down people's necks, the money that they're probably going to spend to sort this situation out is going to be probably double, maybe even more than whatever they had to begin with. So it's just stress on top of stress. And honestly, it could have been so much better handled, but it seems like the owner of Bricks and Minifigs is just incapable of doing the most ethical thing in sorting the situation out in a way that didn't involve, a fat Indian guy even talking about Legos. You've got everyone on the internet talking about this, and for rightful reason so. Law enforcement agencies even had to respond to this, and it seems like people have been alleging that Bricks and Minifigs, and a lot of these people have had their hands up the law enforcement asses, specifically the American Fork Police Department, and have basically used this law enforcement agency to harass the family and the YouTuber in question. Now, again, that's a very severe allegation right there. And honestly, I have some cause to think maybe, just maybe, that might have some validity. And ultimately, I think the validity that it has warrants the federal government to get involved and possibly see if there isn't any law enforcement corruption, right? You know, ultimately, the end of the day, I feel like the actual law enforcement agency over here did very little to assist the family. If anything, it seems like they're doing everything they can to side with the people that are more ethically and morally bankrupt in this entire situation. And it makes me question what the actual involvement of the law enforcement agency really is all about, right? Like, what are they really here to do? And that's a good question that I think everyone's kind of raised, right? You know, at the end of the day, if you were the cops and you're talking about a situation involving, lost, Lego sets. Again, Lego sets that are worth a substantial amount of money. More money than I think, it definitely exceeds the threshold of something that you could file in like a small claims court. Why are they not at least turning this into some sort of criminal investigation to at least help this individual? I mean, that's at the end of the day what we pay like tax money for to begin with. That's what we basically have these people employed to begin with. But again, ladies and gentlemen, it's a complicated story that goes a little bit deeper. And honestly, I say, like with most of these stories, somewhere the truth lies in amongst the miasma, right? It's not that one side is extraordinarily right. But in this case, I do think that who I want to see win the most is the Mansell family, right? Are the people that have put $30,000 of their money into these Lego sets that actually did appreciate. I mean, all things considered, they turned $30,000 into a very, very juicy fund for educating their future generation. They didn't do this because they were scalpers that wanted to get rich. They were people that, were hardworking, salt of the earth kind of people that put their money into something that actually was beneficial for them. They trusted a operation to consign and sell that stuff, like most people would. And they are the ones that got screwed off the most. And honestly, if it wasn't for Reckless Ben, these people would probably have been forgotten about in the corruption that is corporate America. And also the law enforcement agencies that we pay and entrust to ensure that people aren't getting fucked on a daily basis. The Lego scandal is not just about Legos. It's more than Legos at this point. It's about institutional corruption. It's about how corporate America basically fucks the rest of us in our ass. And it's why we as a community should band together to raise the awareness against this stuff and to make sure that this family is fucking made whole. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.